Hey kids, do you know what time it is? It's Latin horror time!
He's not trapped in here with them. They're trapped in here with him.
It's your birthday, and we want you to have fun. It's your birthday, so let's party. It's birthday time!
Hi everybody, this is Justina Bonilla with Latin Horror, and today we have a very special guest. We have the composer himself from Willy's Wonderland and also the voice of Willy the Weasel is E MOI. E MOI, hi, thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So I just want to say that first and foremost with this soundtrack, it's super catchy, and I have not been able to get it out of my head since I heard it.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment. I don't know whether to take that as a compliment. I get that sometimes from people. They're like, I can't get it out of my head. I'm like, are you mad at me or are you complimenting me? I'm not sure. I think it can be kind of frustrating.
I think it's great. For me, I'm sitting at my birthday was in early February. I thought, I would have wanted this for my birthday. This theme. So it's definitely going to be my birthday theme next year for sure.
Awesome.
It's really,
I'll have to get you a message from Willy.
It's enjoyable. For me, it's playful, but then it's still dark, which is what I liked about the composition. So before we get more into that, I just was wondering, what are your favorite horror movies?
Some of my favorite horror movies are Return of the Living Dead, Evil Dead 2, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I like dark comedy and satire in my horror. I'm not too much into gore, but I love like dark fantasy, kind of interesting, cool, supernatural type stuff. As
a musician, what are the genres and the artists that influence you?
I'm huge. Well, I love the horror scoring genre. I'm a huge fan of Christopher Young, who scored Hellraiser. I think he's up there at the very top. I also love John Williams a lot. I'm honestly a very big John Williams fan. I love Star Wars. Score is kind of what got me into wanting to do score in the first place. I love Danny Elfman. I think Ramin Djawadi is doing some amazing stuff with in the sort of the newer realm of composers. Joseph Bashar is doing some awesome stuff.
You are officially on staff.
So what was your musical background before you got into film composition?
So I started off basically with voice. I got into voice at about 5 years old. I started in choir, and then I got from there I went to guitar at a very young age. I went to I've dabbled in almost everything, but guitar, piano, and voice were the ones. The piano came after guitar, and those are the ones that stuck with me the most. I do most of my writing on piano or guitar, and that whole kind of thing.
Welcome to Willy's Wonderland. Spend the night cleaning Willy's Wonderland, and I will pay to have your car fixed. Deal?
So how did you become involved with Willy's Wonderland?
Are you a fan of Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the guy who acted in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, who is Grant Kramer, who he plays Mike Tobacco. He was I met him about 13 years ago in LA at a production studio. He walked in and he had a camera covering half his face, and he just started talking, and I knew immediately, I recognized from just his voice who he was. Like I watched the movie so many times, I knew his voice. And all of a sudden I just stopped and I was like, wait a second, are you fucking Mike Tobacco from Killer Clowns from Outer Space? And he just lowered the camera, turned bright red, and we just kind of became friends. And then he knew that I was doing a lot of commercial work and a lot of music in that sense. And we always kind of talked about doing a feature film, but it having to be the right film, because it's such a commitment. I really would want to do something that's in the genre that I love. And so he hit me up. He said, I've got this script, and I got Gio's script. He sent me Gio's script, and I read it, and I just, oh my gosh, I read it all. I feel like I read the script in like 15 minutes. It went by so fast for me. I loved it so much. And I just was like, oh my gosh. So I called him back and I go, Grant, I don't want to do this movie, man. I have to do this movie. I have got to do this movie. And he was like, right on. So we started with the birthday song.
He's gonna die in here, but he won't listen to me.
It's your birthday, and we want you to have fun.
That was my very first contribution, and that was me kind of getting myself locked in. So I did that in like October. I think it was like October or November of 2019. They started filming in 2020, early 2020, but they had already had the birthday song, and they were able to use that. Yeah, like you can notice in the film, Tex actually sings it when he's looking at the TV. You know, he starts going, "It's your birthday," you know,
Right.
and so they were actually able to use it in the film. So that was kind of a nice, that was sort of awesome.
Well, you know, it's funny that you bring up Killer Clowns, because when I listen to the soundtrack, I do hear influences of that, of John Massari, the composer. And I also hear influences, as you mentioned, Danny Elfman, like 80s video games, and then also Charles Bernstein from Nightmare on Elm Street. So I've heard those influences.
Yeah, and there's actually quite a bit of Bernard Herrmann. I didn't mention that as well, but I definitely borrowed some Bernard Herrmann as well. Like that, just his sort of raw, like the Tito the Turtle scene when he's jumping out and it's like dun, 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 you know, and it's just all the really staccato-y type stabs and the kind of dry forward string instruments. I definitely thought, you know, even in Siren Sarah's Fairy Forest where it's, you know, I mean, you get like all those kind of like really bitey instruments in there. That I definitely Bernard Herrmann and Bernstein and yeah, and John Massari. I wasn't really. I think I'm sure I'm inspired by him because I've seen Killer Clowns a million times. I wasn't directly going for that kind of thing, but you know, the movie is so whimsical and fantastical that I imagine there's probably some similarities musically there.
And I also, to me, when the score gets a little darker, it reminded me of Goblin.
Nice, yeah.
Kind of like Suspiria.
Yeah, no, you're really good. You're really you're really good.
I love film scores.
No, you're very intuitive because the scene where Lund is telling the backstory, I wrote that whole little suite that was it's all medals, you know, where she tells the backstory, and it's Celesta and Glockenspiel and all that kind of stuff, and it was definitely like a Suspiria kind of vibe. That was the fun thing about Willy's too. It's just all the throwback into all those cool movies that we grew up on. I mean, that was really what Willy's was all about. I mean, I was a kid who grew up going to Chuck E. Cheese, going to the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, and watching all the movies that you're mentioning, listening to all the composers you're mentioning. And I think with Willy's, it's a big nostalgia project brought together, and it was just really fun.
I grew up also going to Chuck E. Cheese, and I'm sitting there. I always kind of wondered what the little animatronics did when the doors were closed. So I guess Willy's Wonderland answers that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember one of the last times I was at Chuck E. Cheese. I was probably 10 or so, and you know, every time, you probably know, every time that you go to Chuck E. Cheese, one of the animatronics or two of them are broken for sure, like every time. And they also have the guy in the suit, you know, who walks around in the Chucky suit. So you're sitting. So I was sitting there, and it was my birthday, and I noticed Chucky. One of his eyes was like stuck, you know, and his other eye was moving, and the other eye was stuck, and I just was like so horrified staring at him. And all of a sudden, the guy comes to bring the pizza to the table, and the guy is in the Chucky suit behind me. And all of a sudden, I'm just watching Chucky on the stage, and I'm just like, God, this is really, he just looks like he wants to kill me. I mean, this is just terrible. And all of a sudden, I just turn, and the guy, and Chucky's right there, you know, and I just went, oh my God, and I jumped up. I almost broke the arm of the poor kid next to me. And that's what this movie is tapping into. That's what Gio was very brilliant about, was I think we all, growing up at these places, we all had that feeling that, yes, this is fun. Yes, this is cool, but there is something spooky here, you know? And I'm really surprised that this genre didn't happen sooner because of that.
Exactly. Absolutely. Exactly. Or that dead smile that they have on their face as they're serving you the pizza, and you're sitting there thinking, there's got to be more than cheese and pepperoni on this thing.
Yeah. Is that blood under the cheese? What's going on here?
Yeah. Are you
definitely.
sure that's just tomato sauce?
Exactly.
In the score, I noticed that when Willy is on screen, that you hear "Pop Goes the Weasel." Was that something that you planned initially to put into the score, or did that just kind of happen with the creative process?
The only time I used Pop Goes the Weasel was during the pinball sequence. It was the song, we were trying to figure out what song the pinball machine should play. And so I did an 8-bit version of Pop Goes the Weasel as the pinball song, like the pinball machine song.
Okay, yeah. Because you see Willy there. So I was like, okay, I guess that's his theme. Or
Willy's theme was so. This is another good question that you're asking, because we had this talk early on with Kevin, the director. And it was, what is the theme? If everybody's got a kind of a theme, like the janitor definitely has a theme, which is the bum bum bum. You know, that kind of almost Ennio Morricone kind of. It was like a Western mixed with rock kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. And it takes on many things, like even the romance with the jazzy pinball machine, that jazzy kind of David Lynch-esque little cue is also the same notes as the janitor theme, and the end fight with him and Willy is the janitor theme, and there's many other iterations of the janitor theme throughout. But we were thinking, what is Willy's theme going to be, or what is the theme of Willy's Wonderland? And it was the birthday song is what Kevin wanted it to be. It was really the birthday song. So when you see Willy, a lot of the times where he's, there's that, you know, the flashback when he's serving the kid the cake and Willy comes up, you hear the birthday song come in on piano. And then you also have when Nick and him are having their face-off moment after he kills, I think Gus. I think it's after he kills Gus, that Willy's on stage, and the way he's lit, he just kind of looks pissed, right? And also, you know, you've got like a kind of sped up, sort of out of tempo version of the birthday song to kind of like accentuate his emotions, you know, to kind of speak for him about how sort of upset he was that the janitor was taking out his minions so easily.
It is Nicolas Cage. I mean, come on. You have to expect that.
I enjoy a man of few words.
For the creating this score, how many people did it take to create it? Because I noticed that you had featured some other singers. Yeah,
so I was the only one who worked on the score itself. But for the character songs, except for Six Little Chickens, the character songs, I used Jessica Graves Davis, who is Siren Sarah, and I used Mark Gagliardi, who's Gus Gorilla. And we sort of, because this was COVID, so there was no bringing anybody into the studio. There was no studios open to send anybody to. And so, but I needed a chorusy effect, and I recorded myself going, you know, in Willy's voice going like, it's your birthday and we want you. And then like I would do another version like, it's your birthday and we want you. And doing like trying to fill up all the different frequencies, but I don't have a very low voice and I don't have a super high voice. So I wanted to use Jessica's high voice to give it that kind of kid, to add that kid element. And I used Mark for bass. And so they recorded on their own. It was very tricky because they didn't have like really recording, you know, like a recording equipment where you could put on a click track and they started singing. So it was, they had to just kind of record wild with the birthday song with me singing it in their headphone on, you know, their recording device, send it to me. And then I had to try to sync it up. It was very tricky, but yeah, those were the only other two voices that I used. And I just kind of doubled them and tripled them and stuck them all over the place so that, you know, on the track to make more of a chorusy effect. So
that was actually going to be my next question, was about Willy. How did you become his voice?
So that's a good question. So just like, you know, with the Chuck E. Cheese stuff, it was one of the things that I thought about when I was doing the birthday song originally. My very first contribution to the film was Chuck E. Cheese. In those times, there was always that banter on stage where they would talk to each other. And I thought that was such an important element to add. You know, I was always really pushing for that. I wanted the characters to talk to each other in the songs and all that kind of stuff, and usually some kind of an introduction. So on the original birthday song I sent them, I took it and I put it to a Chuck E. Cheese commercial, an old Chuck E. Cheese commercial. And I put on there, and I just had Willy going, you know, starting it off, just going like, "Hey kids, you know what time it is? It's birthday time." And then the music starts, and then it's like, okay, now kids, I want you to clap your hands like there's no tomorrow, you know, and just doing all that kind of thing. and we just kind of pieced it all together. And I sent it to her. They loved it. You know, in the script, Willy didn't actually talk, but I still thought, even though I had, you know, come up with this banter for him, I figured they would replace me eventually, with a real voice actor and all that kind of stuff. But I think a part of it was COVID. Maybe, you know, I'm not sure exactly like what cemented me in, but they seemed to really love the voice that I did, and they were all very, very encouraging of it. So that was really cool. And when they said, "Yeah, we want you to, we're just gonna have you do it," you know, I was like, "Whoa, awesome, man! This is really cool." So
I get to be an evil weasel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So who would you say was the influence to the style of the voice for Willy?
So the style for so right before I read the script, I was watching Heathers for the 400 millionth time, and I just was watching. I was just thinking, man, Christian Slater, man, he was a legend, man. I mean, he was so good, you know. I mean, just in those movies back then, just unbelievable. I mean, Heathers is such a cool movie, and I just loved how he kind of got psycho. He kind of had this like little raspy voice, and then I always loved Pinocchio. Disney's Pinocchio is one of my favorite, probably my favorite Disney animation, and Lampwick, the orange-haired kid, who's always like, "Hey, Pinocchio, you know, blah 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 blah. You ain't gonna make an ass out of me," you know, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of combined them together, and basically Christian Slater with a Boston accent is what Willy turned out to be. So yeah, that was kind of what I thought of. And
so for the film, how did you feel seeing Nicolas Cage dance to your music?
Awesome. Like the most awesome moment of my life. It's one of the best scenes, and I'm sure you agree, it's probably the best scene in the film, or one of the best scenes in the film. But the guy's got some dance moves. It was really cool. You know, one of the things that actually hasn't been talked about a lot in really any of the interviews that I've watched, or anything anyone's ever asked me before, is that, you know, the pinball scene is that classic throwback to the 80s getting ready for the big fight, right? And like when you think back to the movies, like, you know, where they're you know, training for the big fight, they're the underdog, whatever, they got to go up against the bad guy, you know, no retreat, no surrender, all that kind of stuff. That was what this moment was philosophically for the creators of the movie. They wanted it to be this warm up to the big fight. So we thought, well, if we're going to do that, we have to do a classic 80s theme, because usually in those scenes, it's the theme song to the movie, right? Right. So it had to be at Willy's Wonderland, you know, as he's just as he's getting ready for the big fight. So anyway, it's an awesome scene. It's awesome, brilliantly edited, brilliantly shot.
So are you looking to maybe do more voiceover work in the future? Because I think you did a great job with Willy, making him playful but also evil.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I just I don't know. I mean, I'm not really like closed off to it. It never was really a super huge goal of mine to do voice acting, but I'm open to anything. But it was just even if it's you know, music is the love of my life, so I'm definitely devoted to that. But if there was ever, you know, another opportunity to do something like that, I'd be interested in it probably.
And is there a chance that we might see you do more you know, film scores for horror? Oh, definitely. Yeah.
It's your birthday and we want you to have fun.
But yeah, I've got a few different horror projects that have popped up, and they're all very exciting, and we'll see how it goes, you know. Well, that sounds exciting. Congrats. That's great. Thank you. And so final question, I want to ask you this. If the Willy's Wonderland ever got the score ever got to be published on vinyl, I was wondering, would you prefer a red colored vinyl or maybe a yellow one with red blood splatter on it? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think that yellow one with the red blood splatter sounds kind of cool. And we probably will be doing a vinyl, by the way. It's not time to officially announce, but it has been sort of greenlit, and it's looking like an October release. We're going to do a really cool deluxe vinyl for Halloween release. But yeah, that's a cool, we'll see. I mean, I haven't seen the artwork yet that they're putting together for it, but hopefully it's yellow with blood. Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be and pretty just cool. watch it as it spins. Yeah, exactly. Love it.
I just want to say thank you again for your time. It was great talking to you, and I'm very excited to see not only the future of Willy's Wonderland, because this does feel like it's going to be one of those cult hits of this time period, but then also I'm really excited to see what horror has in store for you in the future.
Thank you so much. That's really wonderful. Thank you. And it was so nice chatting with you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's birthday time.